first of all, just to say to you, when you say you can't see the advantages of going to court, I suggest you might ask the women what advantages they see in going to court as distinct from the tribunal, because clearly they are walking and talking and voting with their feet on this one. I know that you put this amendment 2 in section 2, and I basically copied and pasted your amendment from the last discussion we had before the tribunal bill was passed. And it was said to you at the time by Simon Harris, don't worry about it, that's allowed for. Aggravated damages are allowed for in the circumstances. Well, I want to suggest to you that if you've accepted that, and you've repeated it here now, that's fine. But since there is a huge kickback against this tribunal and all of its mechanisms from the actual sufferers themselves, I would like to ask you how you can guarantee that this will actually be part of it. And therefore, I want to ask you to allow this amendment be inserted into the bill, because what it does is it copper fastens that idea that there will be aggravated damages awarded, rather than just accepting it as being something that is stated. We haven't seen anything here that would make women want to go to the tribunal more than go to the High Court, and considering the lack of trust that they have in the tribunal, accepting and passing this amendment might at least signal that we are serious about addressing their concerns. You mentioned there that there are circumstances that you think that should be broadened out, where women can go before the tribunal. I'd like to ask you why that isn't in tonight's bill. If those circumstances could and should be broadened out, why are they not brought here before the House to address the concerns of the 221 Plus group? Because their impression of the discussions they had with you was that they were not listened to. And if you're listening to them, and if you think it should be broadened out, that should be brought before the House.
Thank you, Deputy Smith. Any other member offering on this? Minister to respond.
Thank you, Deputy Smith. Yeah, I didn't quite realise you had copy and pasted my own amendment, but I know it looks very, very familiar. And indeed, you'll be aware, Deputy, that at the time, then Health Minister Harris told me that the powers were already provided for, both, well, actually in the High Court and at the Tribunal, because it replicates the procedures in the High Court. I checked that myself. And got exactly the same advice that it is covered, and I am satisfied that the tribunal does have exactly the powers already that you're calling for in the amendment, and indeed that I called for previously. I think it's worth saying as well, though, we're talking about some of the advantages of the tribunal. So here is one that I think is an important one. So unlike in the courts, the tribunal has very extensive procedures for non-expert witnesses, is what the language that is used. So essentially, for example, women can give their statements in writing, and responses to questions can also be in writing. So some of this, there has been some real thought put into this to even prevent the circumstances where some of this more adversarial interaction, which I think we all disagree with, can happen. So, Deputy, there is no need to accept the amendments. I'm satisfied that the powers are already there. But I thank you for raising the issue, and I absolutely share the core concern which you've raised.
Deputy Smith.
I really don't understand that answer. I mean, we've all gone through the debate here today, short and all as it was, by the way, very short debate on this very important topic. And, you know, the safeguarding of women against adversarial proceedings, you're telling me, is built into it, but it's not in the Act. And I'm saying to you, if you accept that, and I'm putting the amendment that you originally put, why would you not just insert it, at the very least, to indicate to those who don't trust the tribunal that you're trying to establish at least an element of trust? I mean, there's enough lack of trust in the tribunal, particularly in the case of reoccurrence, which we have discussed. And you made some convoluted answer about reoccurrence. How do you prove it? It's simple. It's simple. Medical science, no, you take a biopsy and you show whether the cancer was a reoccurrence of the original cancer or a new cancer. It's not rocket science, it's medical science. So you need to give at least some reassurance that you're taking these issues serious. I believe ruling my other amendments out of order was kind of slapping that down on the basis of costs. That doesn't make sense that you would slap down amendments on the basis of costs. Because I'm an opposition deputy and I can't have a cost to the state, what we're trying to do here is make a tribunal process fit for purpose, and at the moment it's not. And it's not me that's saying it, it's those who are suffering. They're not going to the tribunal, and it's likely that they won't, that they will choose the courts in place of this very inadequate tribunal. So at the very least, I'm asking you to accept amendment that would indicate that you mean what you say, rather than saying to us that you believe it already exists.
Just to Deputy Smith, to the amendment itself. So this is contained in the Act. What the 2019 Act essentially says is that the procedures, the powers, the running of the High Court is transferred to the Tribunal. So that's how this power is brought across. So it is already in the Act. I don't think it would be wise to complicate the Act, which has been legally proofed and constitutionally proofed, and the Tribunal is established, by inserting duplications, essentially, of powers that are in the Act. But if you're asking me very clearly again, am I absolutely satisfied that the powers are available to the Tribunal? I absolutely am. I tabled the same amendments myself, so I'm very sympathetic to them. But the powers already exist.
I do want to reply to the Minister, because at the outset you have said that the purpose of this was because time is of the essence, that people are very sick and need access and need things to move along. Then why did you not listen to the women and their representative organisation, the 221 Plus group, when they made these points to you, that eligibility to the tribunal must be extended for it to be real? Otherwise you're excluding probably about 300 women from having access to the tribunal, and that is why there are so many cases waiting in the High Court. Now, if you believe that we can sit around and wait and see what happens at the tribunal, and perhaps eligibility might need to be extended and perhaps it won't, and we can bring it back to the House, then you're absolutely making a negative case for yourself on the basis that this is about time sensitivity. Because if it's about time sensitivity, let's expand it now. Let's expand the eligibility, let's change the criteria now, and give the women access to a decent, proper, fully representative tribunal that they've asked you for. It's not like you haven't had negotiations with this representative group, and they are hugely representative of most of the women that are affected, but they weren't listened to. It's not like it hasn't been heard. It's been heard by you, by the Cabinet, by all sorts of people that they've appealed to, that they've written to, negotiations that they had to walk away from because they were so frustrated. Where is this going to end up? A tribunal that's going to take years and years, and then we all scratching our heads, Jays, maybe we should have extended the eligibility here to include dependent children, to include spouses. Maybe that was wrong. This is not time-sensitive behaviour of a minister. If you think it's time-sensitive, then behave like it's time-sensitive and bring those measures in now, rather than waiting to see what the response of the women is, because you know what it is. They've already told you.
Nobody else offering? Okay. Minister, do you wish to comment? You don't?
I think
we're practically out of time. Yeah. No?
Sorry, I'm very happy. I'm not trying to dismiss what the Deputy is saying at all. Deputy, the bill before us was to extend the time. You've asked me very reasonably, will we look at extending eligibility? I'm just saying yes. Yes, we will look at that. And you're making the point that it is time, that it is urgent, and I accept that. But it's not the bill before us today. The bill before us today is simply around timing. But the answer to your question is, will we look at eligibility? The answer is yes. And will we start looking at it with urgency? The answer to that is, too, is yes.
Okay, House stands amendment number 4. Deputy Smith, is it being pressed, or do you want to move on to amendment number 5?
Press amendment number 2.
Okay, number 4 is being pressed. Na chakti atharhev na tharshkin abradistá. Any ton of Gunabradisneel. A stolen will butcher in case you believe the question is defeated. Amendment number 5, Deputy Smith. We've just.
Yeah, this simply is asking, Minister, that you prepare a report within 3 months of the passing of this Act on the costs of the tribunal, the spend of the tribunal's own costs, the amount spent on compensation to victims of screening failures, and the numbers of applicants to the tribunal, and to provide the Oireachtas on a statement on whether the current Act is fit for purpose. It's particularly on the issue of negligent screening practice and its impact on the women involved. So I think it's self-explanatory, and I'd like you to accept this amendment.
Okay.
And then to Deputy Smith's amendment, can I say the Tribunal is currently required to submit its annual report for every financial year to the Minister for Health under Section 35 of the Act, and the first annual report was submitted to me on the 25th of June. The Act provides that the Minister can publish the information in the Tribunal's annual report if they think it seems fit, and I absolutely am undertaking to make a summary of the information submitted to me by the Tribunal available to deputies for its 2020 report available to deputies, and an amendment to facilitate that it isn't necessary. I'll be doing it anyway.